بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So we're on the next greater sin, but it's linked to the one before. This one is not helping the oppressed. So the other one was helping the oppressors, and this one is not helping the oppressed people. So he says not helping the oppressed people and not warding off oppression from them. I have narration he starts out with from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that says not helping the oppressed people is a greater sin. To defend the oppressed is to help them ward off evil. Not performing such a task is shirking a great duty which Allah has made wajib upon us. Imam Qadam alayhi salam says, if a person, due to some difficulty, takes refuge with his Muslim brother, but in spite of being capable of helping him, he does not do it, then he has for his own self cut off the divine help. So we see that whenever we know that our Muslim brother or sister, they need help, then we should be the first one to respond to that. We should help them, we should aid them, we shouldn't leave them all alone, and we should stand up for them, do what we can. If we can change it with our hand, we should change it. If we cannot, then we should at least speak out about it. If we cannot even do that, then it says the weakest in faith is to hate it in your heart. But we shouldn't be complacent with the oppression, and we shouldn't turn our back towards those who need our help. He says Allah does not help a believer who does not help his brother in faith and leaves him on his own. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, a believer who, in spite of being financially capable, does not help another believer will be degraded by Allah in this world as well as in the hereafter. Some people are afraid, that someone will ask them for something. If they knew the blessing involved in this action of giving in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and helping their fellow Muslim brother, they would rush towards this person and not run away from them. They would rush towards giving good, doing good towards others. They would rush towards spending money instead of hiding, when they come and say, oh, I think that brother needs something, let me hide. And, I don't want him to see me. Maybe he's going to ask me for something. We should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us wealth so that we can use this wealth in the path of Allah and help other people. And this will be a means for us for seeking good in the hereafter. This money will not be considered as dunya for us, but it will be working towards our akhirah. Imam Bakr alayhi salam, he said, no, none of you should go to a place where a tyrant ruler is oppressing and killing innocent people. If you are not capable of helping the oppressed, so the condition is you're not able to help the oppressed people there. Because in the event of a believer being present in such a place, it would be his religious duty to help his believing brothers. But if he is not present at the place, the obligation does not exist. So if we go to a place and we see oppression happening, the obligation becomes on us in that moment to be able to help those people. For example, we see people being oppressed. Now we see people being oppressed online. We don't even have to actually physically witness it. But if we see it happening, whether it's physically in person or it's online or something like this, once we see it, the obligation comes on us to help those oppressed people and say something about it and try to help them in whatever way we can. If a person is ignorant of these things and they don't know about what is happening, then the obligation is not on them. For example, someone goes somewhere in the nature hike and up in the mountains and they completely disconnect from everything, their phone, no Wi-Fi, no news, no anything, and they're just camping in their tent, and a bunch of things happened while they were gone, but they didn't know about it. The obligation wasn't on them until they realized what is happening. Imam Bakr alayhi salam says, none of you should, this is the narration we read, he said, Umar ibn Qais said, my cousin and I went to meet Imam Hussein alayhi salam when he was surrounded by the army of Yazid. The Imam talked with us briefly and then asked, "Would you like to help me?" The narrator says, "I replied, I have a family to look after, and besides, I also have some trust with some other people. I don't know what my end would be, and I don't want to find that property of those people. I don't want to owe those people this property, which I have as a trust, and it would be destroyed." Then he said, "My cousin also offered the same explanation. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam told them, "If you cannot offer your assistance to me, then you should go far away from this desert, so that you cannot hear my call when I call for help. Because if anyone is able to hear our cry for help and doesn't respond, it would be wajib on Allah, incumbent on Allah, to throw him into the fire." So we see that the one who heard the cry of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the one who heard the oppression taking place, they needed to help. Imam Hussein said, "If you don't want to help me, you should go far away from here so you don't hear our call." But when we know this is about to happen to grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we should, one would think that they would help the Imam. And this is what we have to be careful of when the time comes to help Imam Zaman, Ajallah Ta'ala Farjuhu Sharif. Will we say, "Oh, I have a job and I have a family and I have other things to do and responsibilities. I've been calling on you to come every day. Allahumma ajjal waliyaka al-faraj, and now you're here, but I'm comfortable." And we have a riwayat about these things that some of them will say, Yabna Zahra, we don't need you. We called on you basically, and you came, but we are comfortable and we don't want any problems. So just go back. So we have to make sure that we're not of this group and that we actually would help the Imam. And we have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to be able to submit and to serve and to help the Imam of our time, inshallah ta'ala. He says, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, or Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, a Jewish scholar was punished with the maces of fire in his grave with such severity that the flames leapt out of that grave from inside. This was because he prayed without doing ablution, without ablution. And once he was passing by an oppressed person who called out for help, but he didn't respond to that person. He didn't help them. According to Jewish customs, they have a type of ablution that they do before prayer. That they wash their hands. It's not the same like us, but in their time, this is what they were doing. And he didn't pray with his ablution. And also, the main thing from this text is that we see that because we're not going to pray on purpose without wudu, but the point from this is that he passed by a person being oppressed and turned away and didn't help and didn't say anything and didn't care to help and intervene. And as long as people are doing that and they are not caring, then the oppression continues on. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "It is necessary to help a believer whether he is an oppressor or an oppressed one. If he is an oppressor, he should be restrained from oppression. And if he is oppressed, then he should be helped in obtaining his rights, and he shouldn't be left on his own." Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, he is not a believer who, in spite of being capable, avoids helping his brother in need. Allah also leaves him on his own and doesn't help him in this world or the hereafter. So if we're able to help our fellow brother in faith, brother or sister, then we should help them. Imam Bakr alayhi salam, he says, a person before whom the defects of his Muslim brother are mentioned, and he doesn't try to remove those defects in spite of being able to do that, then Allah will expose his defects in this world as well as in the hereafter. So we should be like mirrors to each other, is what one of the narrations mentions. So when we see something wrong in the other person in their life, then we can aid them and ease their burden. This is what we should do for them. We would want someone to do this for us, to help us if we were in need. So we should also help those who are in need. When we see the problem in them, we should see the reflection of the problem on us, that we should help them. They need our help. We have the solution. One of the greatest barakat or thawab that we can get is from removing the disturbance or removing the trouble from a believer. He says, from this narration and other similar narrations, it seems that oppression is not confined to physical harm or monetary difficulty. It is also with regard to the injury to the honor and respect of someone else, because the honor of the believer is precious, is sacred, a sacred thing, like his life and his wealth. So speaking bad or ill about a believer is also haram. It's like just like taking his wealth or taking his life is also haram to speak bad about the believer. And the traditions mention this a lot. And it's necessary to defend the life and the property of the believer. It is also necessary to defend the honor of the believer. It's wajib to defend the honor of the believer. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he said in Mishkat al-Anwar, a believer's respect and honor is more sacred than the holy house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Kaaba. So a believer's honor, when we have to think, when we start speaking bad about another believer, that his honor is, as he says, it's much more than that of the Kaaba. So none of us would want to speak ill of the Kaaba or do anything to the Kaaba. So why would we, when we think like this, why would we want to do something to our believing brother or sister or speak bad about them? It is in the nature of people to speak bad about others and do riba and these type of things, but we have to fight it when the temptation rises on us to do riba. We have to combat that by thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thinking about the angels are writing our deeds, thinking about the sacred respect of a believer. And when someone does ghiba in front of us, then we have to confront that and stop that and defend the honor of our believing brother or sister. And if we don't do that, then we are actually encouraging that thing to continue going on, because as long as no one says anything to them, the person doing this action, disrespecting the believer, it will continue to go on and on and on. So we need to be careful with this and always keep this in our mind. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, if a person tells something misleading to a believer by which he intends to make him an evil man, and due to this, his respect and honor will be destroyed, and he will be degraded in the eyes of the common people, and people will not trust him anymore, nor respect him. Then such a person is deprived from the guardianship of Allah and left for the shaitan, who also does not accept him. This act is so bad, the shaitan doesn't even want anything to do with it. So this is for people who mislead other people and try to paint people in a bad image, and try to tarnish their respect, try to tarnish their reputation and their honor, so that everyone else looks bad at them and they don't trust them and they don't respect them anymore. So we have to be very careful that we always respect people, we always treat people kindly, we always honor the believers, followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and we should never disrespect or say anything bad about believers. Even if we find something is true, that is bad, that we need to warn other believers, then in this case, there's still rules and things regarding this which come down to the rules of backbiting, and we can only we should not publicize those things to everyone. We should tell those who are getting involved with them. For example, a girl is wanting to marry this guy, and then they come to us for advice, and we know that this guy is bad news. He's doing drugs or alcohol or cheating or stealing or something, and they don't know these defects. Then we can reveal the defect to save the harm from that person. or someone wants to go in business with someone else, but we know that this person, for sure, we have solid proof that he is cheating in business. We are able to save the harm from that person by telling the other believer not to do business with that person. But when a lot of times when people talk about other people, they have no proof. They just say, I heard, I heard so and so say that such and such is bad, or I don't like his opinion or her opinion, so I don't think they're a good person because such and such and such. But most of the time, there's no research into these things. There's no proof. When you say, okay, can you prove to me why such and such is bad, why such and such you don't like that person? There's nothing. They say, I don't know. I just heard that they're bad. Do you have any proof? No. Allah says to investigate so that you don't harm someone unknowingly. So before we say anything about anyone, it's better not to say anything, first of all. And then if we have to say something, then it should be for the sake of saving someone else from harm, and that we have solid proof for this thing so we don't slander someone else. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if a person hears of the defects of his believing brother in an assembly and he tries to defend him, Allah closes 1,000 doors of evil from him in this world and the hereafter. But in spite of being capable, he does not refrain he doesn't stop the one who is speaking about the defects of a believer. His sin will be equal to that of 70 backbiters, 70 people doing riba, for the one who hears it and doesn't stop it. It's interesting. So Sheikh al-Ansari, he says that this sin is equated to that of 70 people doing riba, for the reason that if the one who is mentioning the defects, the one who's doing riba in the first place, he's not restrained from that, he's not stopped from that, he may repeat this sin and continue on doing it on several occasions because he said, no one stopped me. They must want to hear and they might like it. So I'll continue and tell this thing to other people. There's no one put a stop to it in the beginning. The Sheikh, he further says that preventing the backbiter is not sufficient, but one should also endeavor to defend the believer from these accusations and defects. So he shouldn't just say, just stop, backbiting. I don't want to hear it. This is not enough. He said to actually defend that believer from those accusations. He gives an example. He says, if the defects pertain to something in the dunya, something in this world, he should say, after all, he has not committed a sin. For example, it's not a sin, it's just something you didn't like. If the defects are with regard to some religious obligation, he should try to somehow prove that the allegation is false. An example, if a believer is said to have omitted the prayers, he didn't pray, then one can defend him by suggesting maybe he forgot to offer those prayers. Maybe he intended to, but maybe he forgot. If a believer is accused of drinking for alcohol, for example, one can suggest that maybe you saw him drinking something else. Or, as a last resort, he can say, after all, he is not ma'asum, like no, we are not ma'asum, so not to talk about them because you also probably have some things that you don't want people to talk about with yourself. So, these things also happen. I remember, I'll tell you the effect of it all the way till now. I remember it was so long ago I had forgotten about it, but it was years and years ago. But one of the lecturers, not Muammam, but he lectures famous in anyway. Something went around online and they were saying that, oh, he was drinking alcohol because he had a glass that looks like the alcohol glass, and they said there's alcohol in that glass, and he's drinking because only this someone in another country, they don't know about these things, and they said this glass is only used for alcohol. But they didn't realize that in the Western countries, these glasses, if you go to a fancy restaurant, they also serve water in these glasses and other things, juice and other stuff. They said he's drinking alcohol and put the picture all over the internet, and everyone was saying, oh, he shouldn't get on minbar because he was drinking alcohol. He wasn't drinking alcohol, but the glass just looks like, this is what they serve in the fancy restaurants. It happened. I forgot all about it until recently. Someone told me, "Oh, that person, you know him. He's drink. I saw the picture of him drinking alcohol all the way here, in this side of the world, in Turkey, and the other person from another country, and that person's telling me, "Oh, such and such. It's traveled all over the world, but it was false. It can make a lot of bad repercussions for." That person being falsely accused, and all the people, who's spreading this thing without any proof, and they don't know. They should have just defended and said, um, the person's reputation is very good. How can you say that this is alcohol? It must be something else. It cannot be that thing. And, explain it in that way. He says, a man is prone to sin sometimes. So instead of backbiting him, you should try to reform him and help him in his difficulties. But the problem with society is that when they see someone that is going through something, they are sinning, they got off track. What did they do? Instead of helping them up, they kick them down. They stomp on them, they run them over, they say all bad things about them and kick them while they are down. But this is not how we should deal with each other, because we are one big family of believers. If someone else is hurting, I should also feel that pain. If I see them down, I should extend my hand and pick them up. Maybe they're dealing with a sin that I myself have overcome, and I don't struggle with the sin anymore because I know how to deal with it, and they don't know how to deal with it. Maybe I can give them some insight and help them. And maybe I am struggling with something that they have overcome, and maybe they can tell me the way that they dealt with it. We have to help each other out and not just be quick to point the finger, because that's what most of the time we do. Oh, you see such and such? Look at that. Oh, wow, stuck for Allah. Na'udhu billah. Look at them. What are they doing? I can't believe that they're doing that, and they claim to be a Muslim and such and such and such, and goes on and on and on. Everyone here has heard this stuff before, and unfortunately, it happens too often. So we, instead of saying all the bad things, let's try to come up with action plan to help those people. Okay, yeah, they did such and such. That's terrible. We shouldn't be happy about that they did such and such thing to give us some enjoyment to talk about them. We should think about, what can we do to help them? Such and such has left the community. They're not praying. They're not coming around. They're, doing this and that. How can we get them back in the community? That should be our goal, not to just say, oh well, get lost, good riddance. So one should make every effort to defend the believer when he is being dishonored. And he said, we have other narrations about this, and it'll be talked about when we get further chapters dealing with riba. But we should always strive to help our fellow Muslim and not be the one to put him down, not to be the one to talk bad about them, because we would hate for someone to talk bad about us. So we should know that helping an oppressed person, it does not become wajib only when they ask us for help. So every person who is capable of removing the difficulty of a believer, they should do so. And if the needy person has asked for assistance, then it becomes more important. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The one who hears the call of a person to the Muslims, saying, 'O Muslims, come to my aid, come to my assistance,' and they don't assist him, that person is not a Muslim at all." So we see, for example, a Muslim brother, they say, I'm in need of help. Please help me, begging for our help. And we say, no, I'm not going to help you. Unfortunately, this happens quite often. It's even happened to myself in my earlier years. And, it happens to a lot of people. They go, they ask for help, they turn them away because of some, usually it's because of some petty differences. The person says, "Oh, I don't like them because they follow different marja than me," or, "Oh, I don't like that one because he goes to different Husseiniya than I do." Oh, they said Eid was on this day and we said Eid was on that day. I don't like that person anymore. When they ask me for help, I'm not going to help them at all. There's some silly reasons like this. And the Prophet says, if they ask us for help and we don't help them, then we are not even in a state of Islam at that time. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, if a person requests his Muslim brother to help him and the latter does not do so in spite of being capable enough, Allah installs a huge snake from the snakes of Jahannam in his grave so that it continuously bites him. And this is the punishment. We spoke about this before, that the action is linked to consequence in hereafter. So the not helping the oppressed, not helping the Muslim when they call for aid is linked to this action that when someone does not help them, then it manifests this thing in their grave, this snake. Another narration from Imam, it says, no person refrains from helping and pleasing his Muslim brother unless there is some benefit in it. His helping, he says, his helping would have been sinful instead of rewarding. So we should help the Muslim even if there is no benefit in it for us. There, of course, there is benefit. What I mean is material benefit. Sometimes people help someone else so that they can help them later. But for us helping the person, it should be purely fi sabilillah, in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will get thawab for that. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam said, the sin which results in the descending of calamities is when one does not respond to the call of help from the helpless ones. So this not helping the oppressed, if we don't help the oppressed, calamities and trials will come down on us. And we look at this people in Palestine asking for help all the time. Look at the situation, and people are able to help them, but they choose to sit back and not help them. If they are witnessing this tragedy and they can help their Muslim brothers, but choose not to, for whatever reasons they have, they will have calamities and trials and many things afflict them. So they should help them in the best way that they can. Imam, he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, Ya Allah, this is Sahifa Sajadiyah. Ya Allah, I plead for the forgiveness for the time when someone is oppressed in my presence and I don't do anything to help him. I seek refuge in you for not helping an oppressed and a needy person. So the Imam is teaching us through our dua that if someone is oppressed in our presence and we don't help them, then this act is worthy of seeking forgiveness, meaning that it is a sin and that we need to ask Allah for forgiveness for this. So that means if we see an oppressed person, we don't want to have to ask for forgiveness or do a sin, then we should help that person and aid them and do all that we can for that person. It comes from us being aware of each other too. We need to, know what's going on in each other's life and keeping in touch with each other. And then we can find out who is in need, who is not in need, because sometimes the person in need doesn't ask for anything at all. They're just trusting in Allah and they're doing their best, but they are really in need. And someone can realize it by knowing them, and then they can help them or get the help from them from someone else. So we've run out of time in this session, and inshallah, we